Looking back on the week that was and forward to the week ahead. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
All across the fantasy universe. Welcome one and all to the Fantasy Football Hustle, powered by Pro Football Focus. I'm, of course, your host, Brian Drake. You can follow me on Twitter at Drake Fantasy, and be sure to check me out Sundays, 7 to 9 Eastern, as I host PFF Postgame on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. So week 7 of the fantasy season is upon us already. Holy smokes, this thing's going fast. Bye weeks are in full swing. So this week coming up, we're down the Bills, Eagles, Rams, and Vikings. So there are some massive holes to be filled in our rosters. I'll dig into the waiver wire as we go along, give you my takes on who should be the priority ads. We'll also have my Hate the Drake segment. This, of course, is where I break down the players who let us down in week 6, try to spin it forward, talk about what we should do with these players, because I know it's trade season, right? Many of us are out there, they're hitting up daily in the DMs. Drake, who should I trade for? Who should I be trying to get for this player, X, Y, and Z? Well, we'll talk about it a little bit tonight. So what are the big picture takeaways? I'll kind of talk about teams and situations and mix in the waiver wire as we go. I want to start with this, though. Breece Hall is a stud. 20 carries for $116 and a touchdown, plus a pair of catches. He's RB6 on the season, folks. His utilization is off the charts for a Jets team who simply doesn't want to throw the football. If you've got Hall, he's worth CMC and Barkley type values back in a trade. Don't even think of giving him away. You're going to get all kinds of offers this week, all right? Just relax. Hold on to something. You got a valuable asset here. As for the Jets passing game, hashtag yikes. This is ugly. Now, a lot of teams are trying to hide the quarterback. The Jets are succeeding at it. New York was 1 of 13 on third down Sunday. They allowed Zach Wilson to throw 18 passes. My God, he must have been in the stands, hunting for moms. But they didn't even bother trying to target Elijah Moore. And they won the game. This is unsustainable. We all know this. But congrats to Jet fans on your 4-2 start. That's awesome. I'm happy for you. Jets wide receivers right now are unusable for fantasy football. Over the last 2 weeks, the Jets are 28th in pass attempts with just 41. If I can trade Elijah Moore or Garrett Wilson for anything right now, I'm doing it. This win leads me to my second point, and that's that the Green Bay Packers are broken. I said it last week, and it bears repeating. This team sucks. They can't get the ball to their playmakers, and now Randall Cobb's down with an injury. Romeo Doubs is out here running wind sprints. His 95 air yards were the second most in the league prior to Monday Night Football. More on the Packers and the Hate the Drake segment later, but I'm getting out of the Packers business for fantasy. Aaron Jones, Allen Lazard, the only 2 Packers you can start with any confidence going forward. Really, there's not a lot of confidence in those 2 either. Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys, he's looking to return next week, and it should juice up this Dallas pass game, right? Cooper Rush went 4-1 as a starter. We're cool with that. I don't want to hear the Cowboy fans out there crying that they lost to the Eagles. Oh, we had a backup quarterback in there. I didn't hear you talking about your backup quarterback, when you beat the teams that just went to the Super Bowl last year. Just be happy that you went 4-1, all right? Good job. So from weeks 2 to 6, though, Dallas was 28th in pass attempts, 26th in passing yards, and they only had 5 touchdown passes. So the window to buy CeeDee Lamb might be closed, but don't sleep on Michael Gallup and Noah Brown, who are playing a ton in 3 wide sets. Gallup's only owned in 50% of Yahoo leagues. He had a down week against Philly, but he still saw 7 targets. Almost had a touchdown in the end zone, got reviewed, overturned. Dallas's future schedule includes Detroit and Chicago. So arrow pointing up in Big D. I don't know where the arrow's pointing in Arizona, to be honest. This team is just bad, and they lost their best weapon. Hollywood Brown will be out indefinitely with a foot injury, right? So this team went out and traded for former Panthers wide receiver Robbie Anderson on Monday. He'll pair up with DeAndre Hopkins, fresh off his suspension, on Thursday night when the Cardinals next play. I don't think we should be rushing out to add Robbie Anderson. He's likely the 4th option, I would say, on this Cards team behind Hopkins, Rondale Moore, who if he's on your waiver wire, pick him up, and Zach Ertz. In deeper leagues, though, if he's free, take a shot. Just don't expect too much from Robbie Anderson while he learns whatever this offense is supposed to be. James Conner should be okay. Eno Benjamin fell a little flat in his debut as a starter. Some guys just can't handle the load, and others can, like Deion Jackson of the Colts. Likely, though, a 1-week plug-in. Plug-and-play guy, but he got you 28 PPR points this week. Finishes the top running back in fantasy. And it shows exactly why teams don't want to pay running backs. You can find a dude like Deion Jackson who was flipping burgers a week before, and with the right amount of touches, they can be fantasy superstars. Now, Jackson didn't run for much, 42 yards. By the way, missed his prop on Underdog by half a freaking yard. Cost me $500. I digress. So the reason that, he didn't run for much is because this Colts line is dog shit. But he did catch 10 balls for 79 yards. We can only pray to the fantasy gods that when Jonathan Taylor comes back, he earns some of those targets. Now, that's, of course, if Nyheim Hines is still hurt. These dual backfields suck. It's the reason why CMC and Saquon Barkley are fantasy monsters, to be honest, folks. Because they get the football. They don't share it. A guy off the couch like Deion Jackson proved that winning in fantasy football is about one thing: opportunities. Now, I wouldn't go out and spend much on Jackson if he's still on your waiver wire, as Jonathan Taylor could be returning this week. Sticking in the running back fold, J.K. Dobbins' return to play was a great story. His actual play, though, kind of stinks. Now, Dobbins was said to have tweaked his knee. It tightened up, quote unquote, and Kenyon Drake led the Ravens with 10 carries for 119 and a touchdown. Rumor has it, though, the Gus Bus is warming up, and he's close to a return. And that's the name for the long term I'd be putting my chip on in this backfield. Now, Drake, if you're desperate with buys and maybe you're in a deep league, you got a roster spot, okay, throw him on there. Let's see what happens. Could take Gus a little while to get cooking. The Ravens play the Browns, Bucks, and Saints in their next 3, though, so some tough sledding in a few of those contests. Pittsburgh, you Steelers, you had to run it back to Mitch Trubisky on Sunday after Kenny Pickett went down with a concussion, and Mitch looked good. Listen, I shit on Mitch a lot on this show. Mitch looked okay? Steelers quarterbacks on the afternoon had a quarterback rating of 106.7. That's awesome. Chase Claypool was Mitch's favorite target. Now, I'm not going nuts on the waiver wire for Chase Claypool if he was dropped, okay? That's Mitch's boy. That's who he loves throwing to. Pickett will get this role back. And this offense is pretty low octane, folks. Deontay Johnson is still the top option. Then there's George Pickens. Najee Harris got in the end zone as a receiver. And if you need that to be what gets you over the hump to selling him to somebody in your league, now's the time to do it. Use that touchdown. Najee averaged 3 yards a carry, albeit, hey, it's against a good Bucs defense. But that line stinks. You don't want to count on Najee Harris going forward. Steelers are 22nd on the season in rush attempts. Get out while you can. Speaking of quarterbacks, you might need one this week, right? We got no Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Kirky Cousins, Matt Stafford. They're all off. So here's my top waiver wire targets. Jared Goff. He's owned 55% of Yahoo leagues, but he plays the Cowboys. So that's not great, but he's likely to throw it 40-plus times. How about Jimmy G? Owned in only 39% of Yahoo leagues, faces the Chiefs at home, going to have to throw the ball, going to have to put up points. We saw him get the ball to Brandon Ayuk, who could have been cut in a few leagues. So if he's out there, I'm not counting on 2 touchdowns every week, but super deep league, you got a flex or 2. Okay. Kenny Pickett, if he's cleared, takes on the Dolphins. Their corners are dropping like flies in South Beach. Trevor Lawrence gets the Giants, and if you're really desperate, you can go on the other side of that matchup too. Daniel Jones, he's viable. And super flex special, how about Taylor Heineke for the Commanders, taking over for Carson Wentz? Now, Heineke's not great, we know this, but he's got a grasp of the offense. He can get the ball to the playmakers. They'll play Green Bay. We'll see. Does Green Bay tuck and run in this game, or do they actually show up after losing to the Jets at home? And don't forget Matty Ryan. Completed 42 balls. Holy smokes. and he plays the porous Titans secondary this week. Let's talk about the Rams. They go on bye, and they're likely saying bye-bye to running back Cam Akers. And not much is known about how or why this divorce is happening, but the word is Akers is done. And that leaves holes in the Rams' backfield. The name to know here is Kyren Williams, the rookie out of Notre Dame. He was set to have a role on opening night, and then, of course, he gets injured on the opening kickoff. Here's what I'm going to tell you, though. This is another team with a horrific offensive line, and they just lost their left tackle for the year on Sunday. They still ran for 111 yards, though. Darrell Henderson is not a load-bearing running back. The Rams on Sunday had 8 different players carry the ball. They're dying for someone to complement Darrell Henderson, and it might just be Kyren Williams. If you can hold him through the bye or stash him on IR, that's a name to watch going down the stretch. Plus, he's good in the passing game. Speaking of names to know and stash, how on earth is Jamison Williams only rostered in 32% of Yahoo leagues? This guy was the 12th overall pick in the draft. He's been comped to Tyreek freaking Hill. The Lions throw the ball at a higher than average clip because their defense blows. All right? The Lions are top 5 in passes attempted over 20 yards. This kid can straight up fly. All right? This Williams kid is going to explode. Pounce on him now. This kind of pains me to say this, but hey, I'll shout out to you Giants fans. The Giants are 5-1. Again, let me say this. The New York Football Giants are 5-1. Now, they needed an implosion from Lamar Jackson and the Ravens to get there, but hey, a win is a win. The offense struggled Sunday, but New York may have found their new wide receiver 1 in rookie Wan'Dale Robinson. The diminutive wideout only saw 4 targets, but he took one to the house. He only played 14 snaps in week 6, but more are surely coming. Listen, there's nobody else here. It's Wan'Dale, it's Darius Slayton, it's maybe the guy who used to cheer for the Jets with the fireman hat. Maybe he's still walking around MetLife. They got him out running out routes. Who knows? Okay. But I think he's going to be a wide receiver 3 in fantasy lineups from here on out. Speaking of wide receivers, be careful with Tyquan Thornton of the Patriots. Yes, he had a nice day. He scored on the ground and through the air. So people are going to start making like these Deebo Samuel comps, right? The Pats were without Nelson Aguilar, and Kendrick Bourne left early in that game. I'm not ready to say the kid is waiver wire worthy because he's got some juice, and we know the Pats have literally 0 on offense. I'd only recommend him, though, right now in the deepest of leagues. Monday Night Football just ended before I started recording this, and we saw a few interesting developments. First, Albert O was inactive for Denver, leading the way for rookie Greg Dulcich to take his spot. He showed out too. He's got his Yanni-esque wavy hair, scores in the first half, and he ran 15 routes on 18 first half snaps. To quote the great George Costanza, that's like finding plutonium by accident. Tight end needy teams are going to empty the tank for Dulcich this week. On Monday Night Football, we also saw Joshua Kelly go down, leaving Sony Michel as the 1B to Austin Eckler. Be, wary of that because he's getting carries out there. They're not giving every tote to Austin Eckler. Very important thing to watch in deeper leagues. For the Broncos, we got a healthy dose of Syracuse native Latavius Murray. The veteran filled in for Melvin Gordon, who was beat up all week. Murray carried 15 times for 66 yards. Mike Boone was an afterthought. Trust me, I know. I started him in some leagues. Guy got 1 carry. Now, I'd be okay seeing what Murray looks like on my bench for depth. I don't think he supplants Gordon, but you never know if maybe Melvin gets traded at the deadline now that Denver is 2-4. Speaking of wide receivers, you might need one this week. We're going to be without Zach Ertz. We're going to be without Irv Smith. We're going to be without Dawson Knox. We're going to be without Tyler Higbee. How about Big Bob Tonyan? Remember him? Led the Packers this week with 12 targets. Randall Cobb is going to be out. Maybe we see a little more Big Bob as a weekly score. Other names to know at wide receiver, Daniel Bellinger scored for the Giants. Cade Otton, an exciting rookie, flashes a pass catcher a week ago, could replace Cam Brate, who went down with another injury. And Hunter Henry found the end zone for the Pats this week if he's on your wire. Folks, I want you to go and download the Top Prop Fantasy app. I've been pushing their product all year long, and I'm crushing the props. I think I'm something like 15-5 on the year. All you got to know, who scores more fantasy points. You go to their app, again, Top Prop Fantasy, download it in your app store. They're going to bring up the games, and it's going to say, who's going to score more points? Is it going to be Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen? Boom. You pick one guy, you put a bet down on it. That's all it takes. Use my promo code Drake. I'm going to double your first-time deposit up to $50. You can't beat that. Use promo code Drake, and I'll double your first deposit up to $50. Top Prop Fantasy. Love those guys. Big shout out. Thanks for supporting me and the hustle. All right, it's time for America's favorite segment. It's Hate the Drake. This is where I talk about the players who kind of let us down on Sundays and what we're going to do with these guys going forward. How about Mike Evans? We're going to start there. The Steelers were without Minkah Fitzpatrick and 3 other members of their secondary on Sunday. This should have been pitch and catch for the Bucs, right? Instead, Tampa goes into Pittsburgh and loses. Evans was brutal on Sunday. 4 catches for 42 yards. He was a DFS darling, but wasted the beautiful matchup with his 8 PPR points. He did manage to catch all of his targets. Just wasn't meant to be for Evans. The Bucs dropped to 3-3 on the season. Their offensive line is a major issue. That's kind of the theme of the show today. Look at your fantasy teams and go, who's got a shit offensive line? Those are kind of the teams you want to get away from. Better days are ahead for Evans. And if Chris Godwin is out there and people are, maybe they have a losing record in the league and you can pry Godwin off him, by all means, go for it. That guy looks like he could be a league winner going forward. Nick Chubb. This is what you risk when you draft Nick Chubb. Now, he could be wiped out if the game script's not favorable. Sunday, the Patriots rocked Cleveland 38-15. Chubb, who's never a factor in the pass game, caught 1 ball for 14 yards. His rushing day was forgettable too. 12 carries totaling 56 yards. 8 fantasy points on the day. And like I said, this happens with backs who don't catch passes. His running mate, Kareem Hunt, who actually does catch passes, he had a worse day. He only had 12 yards rushing and 0 catches. You can't really be that upset, though, with Chubb. He's given you elite RB1 usage thus far. But on Sunday, Chubb makes the Hate the Drake list. If someone's down on Chubb, send the offer. Hey, see what happens. Remember, down the road, with both those running backs, you're going to get Deshaun Watson back sooner than later. And maybe this offense opens up a little bit, especially Kareem Hunt as the pass-catching back, if you can buy him on the cheap after this terrible performance. All right, we're back to the Packers again. Aaron Jones. I could put the entire Packers offense on the Hate the Drake list weekly, it seems. But Jones is the only player with any juice on this Packers offense, and they have no idea how to get him the ball weekly. Only 4 targets in a game where they trailed for most. Not to mention his 9 carries only tallied 19 yards. There's major issues in Green Bay. This offense sucks. LaFleur needs to understand that Jones should be the focal point of the offense. A.J. Dillon does not need 6 targets. Heck, he doesn't need 10 carries in a losing effort, okay? The Packers' leading target getter on Sunday was Big Bob Tonyan. We talked about him in the waiver article, right? What are we even doing here? I hate everything about this team. Let's go to South Beach, talk about Raheem Mostert. Just when we started feeling good about Mostert, right? He lays this egg on us. 14 carries for 49 yards. Little banged up during the week. He had a knee injury. Word is he had some fluid drained. He's looking to be okay. But if he's active and he's leading the team in carries, you'd assume he's okay. Still played 62% of the snaps, handled 83% of the rushing attempts. Just a day where the best option for the Dolphins was to get the rock to Tyreek and to Waddle, right? Don't go dropping Mostert. Don't think of him also as your RB2 because he's going to fluctuate. Guy I'd like to trade for, though, perfect bye-week fill-in running back. It's Raheem Mostert. Maybe you get him on the cheap after this week's performance. Well. Look who we have here. If you took the risk and you played Taysom Hill at tight end, well, these are the kind of games you get. He ran 5 times for 39 yards through 2 passes for 16 yards. If Hill doesn't get into the end zone in some gadgety fashion, he's simply not going to come through. Now, I understand why people want to play him for the upside at tight end, but you're going to have nights like this where you get 4.5 points. He can't be trusted. In fact, he can only be hated unless he's playing quarterback, which this week, folks, there's a shot Taysom Hill could start at quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. Andy Dalton went down with a back injury. Jameis isn't ready to go back yet. We'll see what happens. If you can play Taysom Hill at tight end while he's really playing quarterback, that's a home run smash play. You're going to win your week right there. So if Taysom Hill's on your waiver wire and you can get him and the word comes out that he's looking to play quarterback this week, you got to go. You got to be aggressive and go get him. Maybe even in your leagues, you make a trade for him because the guy who has Hill is asleep at the wheel and doesn't realize there's a shot at him playing QB. Just monitor that throughout the week. Next up, Jeff Wilson Jr. Now, Jeff Wilson Jr. is having a pretty good year, right? But it just wasn't his day on Sunday. He only handled 7 carries for 25 yards and didn't catch a pass. And thanks to losing a fumble, he ended his day with half of a point. Yep, the dude was RB19 entering the week, didn't even get you a point. Hashtag yikes. That's fantasy football for you. J.K. Dobbins wasn't much better. He scored a whole 1.5 points, but he had a knee issue apparently. So 7 carries for 15 yards just shows you that he is not ready to be in fantasy lineups yet. These knee issues can be very hard to come back from, especially at the running back position. I don't have any faith in Dobbins for the near future. And don't look now, but like I said before, that Gus Bus, baby, it's warm up in the garage. Any day now, he's going to come back. Kenyon Drake led the backfield. If he's on your waiver wire and you're desperate this week, maybe you're without Miles Sanders or Devin Singletary, take a shot on the Ravens. Finally, I love shitting on the Jets. Elijah Moore. I had to check to make sure that he wasn't hurt. He wasn't even targeted on Sunday. The Jets pass game is unwatchable. Now, Moore is as talented as any wide receiver who came out the past 2 years. And now he's just running wind sprints out there. Zach Wilson was 10 of 18 for 110 yards and no scores. That's pathetic. The leading Jets receiver was Corey Davis, who caught 2 balls. Even Garrett Wilson was invisible. He's 5 targets, only turned into 1 for 8. This offense is all Breece Hall. The rest of it stinks. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter at FF Hustle. I'm at Drake Fantasy. Make sure you're going over checking out Dwayne's work, right? Don't forget about our boy Dwain McFarland. At Dwain McFarland on Twitter. Read his stuff over at Fantasy Life. You can get a subscription at PFF using our promo code HUSTLE. 25% off. How can you beat that? Use promo code HUSTLE. Save 25% at PFF. Man, what a good time. I really enjoy doing these shows for you guys. I got a couple of questions here in the chat. So I'll hit those now. Got to drop one for a defense. 11 bench league. Algier or Pacheco? Well, I mean, let's look at it. Who's got the most upside? Is it Tyler Algier? Probably not. As more of a grinder, they're using Huntley and other guys are getting to the end zone. I'd keep Pacheco. Preston wants to know, would you trade Josh Reynolds and Brian Robinson for Olave? I don't even need read the rest of this question. The answer is yes. Now, Josh Reynolds is going to take a back seat when Jameson Williams comes back to the team. And Brian Robinson, while a nice story, also is a 0 in the pass game, and the Commanders suck. So, yes, get your hands on Olave if you can. Folks, that'll wrap it up for the hustle. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, go over to Twitter. Check me out at Drake Fantasy. Give a follow. If you're digging the show, leave a comment on YouTube. Please subscribe to that YouTube channel. Click like. Let us know you're enjoying it. Wherever you listen to the show, iTunes, or there's a zillion of these podcast things out there. Whatever you do, just leave a nice comment for us. It really helps us out. Helps us climb the rankings in the podcast world. All right, folks. Brian Drake signing off this week. Good luck. We'll be back later in the week with more hustle. And remember, when you hit that waiver wire Tuesday night, never get out hustled.